Hello SLM class. So I got a lot of complaints from some of y'all who said that you guys weren't learning anything because you were just giving PowerPoints. So here I am trying to make a video for y'all so you can have something to follow along with. So today we're going to try to do solving linear systems by substitution. So last time in your class you were solving linear systems using graphing. So you were given a graph, you were given two lines. Why is that so thin? So you were given a graph, your x-axis and your y-axis, and then you were given two lines. For example, you were given this blue line and this green line, and then your only job was to find where they intersected. Alright, so this time we're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be given two linear equations with two variables, always x and y, and then we're going to find where they intersect, their solution. Alright, so like I said, you're going to be given two equations, 1 and 2. My first equation is going to be y equals 2, and my second equation is going to be x plus y equals 6. So the goal of this is to get one of my equations with the letter by itself. In this case, my first equation already has y by itself, so I did my first step. So my first equation is telling me that y is equal to 2. Y is equal to 2. Let's look at our second equation. Our second equation, and I'm going to rewrite it, says x plus y is equal to 6. Now we're going to use our first equation, and we're going to plug it into our second equation. So our first equation says y equals 2, and our second equation says x plus y is equal to 6. Since our first equation is telling me that y equals 2, I'm going to substitute that 2 into my y. So instead of writing x plus y, I'm going to write x plus 2 is equal to 6, because y is equal to 2. Cool. So now we have a new equation that looks like this. And then all you have to do is solve for x. We've been doing this for months. What do we have to do to get x by itself? We're going to have to get rid of the positive 2. How do we get rid of the positive 2? Well, that's by subtracting. My 2's cancel out. I'm left with 4 on the right side and x on the left side. So that means that x is equal to 4. Now, just like we did in graphing, my answer has to have an x and a y. We just said that x is equal to 4. So instead of writing x, we're going to write 4. And according to my first equation, y is equal to 2. So y is going to be 2. And that's it. That's my answer. My solution for these two linear equations is going to be 4, 2. Cool. Here is the second problem. So once again, we're giving 1 and 2. And you can go ahead and pause right here if you need time. I might have gone too fast. Cool. So let's move on to question number 2. Once again, we're given two equations. In this first one, I was given y by itself. In the second one, I'm now given x by myself. It doesn't matter what we have first, x or y. As long as it is by itself, we are good to go. So again, we're going to be using my second equation, and we're going to be plugging it into our second equation. We're going to be using our first equation, and we're going to be plugging it into our second equation. So our second equation says that x plus y is equal to 9. Since our first equation says that x is equal to negative 3, I'm going to plug in negative 3 for x instead of x. And then the rest just comes down like usual. And then once again, I'm left with something that we've seen 1,000 times before. We got to get y by itself. What do I have to get rid of to get y by itself? That's right, negative 3. And how do I get rid of a negative 3? That's right, by adding by 3. And whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So my 3's cancel out, and I'm left with 9 plus 3, which is equal to 12. So my y is equal to 12. So once again, my answer has to be in x and y form. My first equation gives me the value of x, which is -3. And my work that I did right here gives me my value of y, which is 12. So my answer is -3, 12. Cool. All right. So again, like I said before we move on to problem number 3, we have to make sure that in our first equation, my x or my y is by itself. Here, we have a y. Let me just rewrite the formula. Now, it's either x or y. You can choose either or. Is either of them by themselves? Yes, y is by itself on the left side. So we can move on to this step right here. So now we just gotta use our second equation and plug in what we know. Our first equation tells us that y is equal to 4x. So instead of writing y, I'm going to substitute, that's why they call it substitute. I'm going to plug in 4x instead of y. So my new equation is going to become x plus 4x is equal to 10. So again, we're left with that equation that we've seen 1,000 times before. Can I combine these two? Yes, x plus 4x is going to be equal to 5x. That's because remember, when we have an x by itself, there's going to be an invisible 1 in front of it. So we're going to have 1 plus 4 equals 5x is equal to 10. Now we got to get x by itself, so we're going to divide by 5. And we're left with x by itself is equal to 2. So, now it's time to write my answer. It should be in an x and a y, two numbers. We know that our x is equal to 2 by our work that we did right here. But our first equation only tells us that y is equal to 4x. We only have y in terms of x. But that should be no problem because from my work, we know the value of x. So again, we're going to substitute x in place of x. So we're going to have 2, 4, and instead of writing this x right here, we're going to write 2. Now, when we have parentheses like these, that means we're going to multiply. So what's 4 times 2? Killing it. It's 8. Good job. All right. This one's similar to the last one. So I'm going to ask your substitute, whoever's watching the class, to pause this right here. And I'll give you guys a shot to do it. Cool. So let's see what you got. So here, once again, we're given two formulas. My first formula has y by itself. So we're good to move on. I'm going to rewrite my second equation. And again, my first equation tells me that y is equal to 2x. So I'm going to substitute 2x for every y that I see in my second equation. I'm going to substitute 2x for every y that I see in my second equation. So, we see parentheses. That means we must multiply. So what's 5 times 2x? 10x. Bring everything else down. Can we combine like terms? Yeah, we have 10x and we have 2x. They both have x's. So what's 2x plus 10x? That's going to be 12x. All right, so let's divide. Divide by 12, divide by 12. We're left with x is equal to 10 over 12. Or if you put it in your calculator and simplify, you're going to get 5 over 6. Cool. I'm going to try to move this because I ran out of space. Sure, right there. That works. So now I need my answer in terms of x and y. Again, we got our x, which is 5 over 6. Sorry if you can't see that. And we get our y from our first equation, which is equal to 2x. 2x. Now all we have to do is plug in the x that I solved for into my answer, and then that should give us our solution. You guys can just go ahead and plug this into your calculators, and that's going to give you 5 over 6, 10 over 6. Yes, that's right. Cool. All right. This one is where it becomes a little more complicated. So all the ones that we've done so far, we had our first equation with either x or y by itself. In this last one that we're going to do, we have two more. In this last one that we're going to do, we don't have any x's or y's by itself. So that means that we have to get x or y by itself. So I'm going to bring out my first equation. I'm just going to rewrite it. And I need to either get x or y by itself. I'm going to be looking at the numbers in front of my x and y, and I'm going to determine which one will be easiest to get by itself. Here I have a 3 in front of my x, and here I have a 1 in front of my y. Since my y is already by itself, like it doesn't have a number in front of it, I'm going to say that y is going to be easier to get by itself. So we're going to do what we've been doing, I think, the past 2 days for 6th period, and hopefully last class for 9th period. We're going to get y by itself. What do I need to get rid of to get y by itself on the left side? We need to get rid of 3x's. So I'm going to subtract by 3x's. 3x's cancel out, and we're left with y is equal to -3 minus 3x. Can you combine these two? You cannot. One of them has an x and the other one doesn't. So that means we're just going to write them down next to each other. So I can, instead of writing my first equation, I can just write this because they're essentially the same thing. So now we have an equation with y by itself. Now we have an equation with y by itself. So now we can move on and write our second equation down and plug in for y. So my second equation is going to be -2x plus y is equal to 7. Now, we know that y is going to be equal to -3x minus 3. So instead of writing y in my second equation, I'm going to write down -3x minus 3. And that is all I'm doing. I am substituting my y for whatever I determined my y was in my first step. So now all I have to do is get x by itself. First, I must combine like terms. That's going to give me -2x minus 3x. You can put that in your calculators if you like, but that's going to be -5x minus 3 is equal to 7. I'm going to draw my line down the middle. I have to get x by itself. First, I must get rid of whatever's furthest away from my x. So that's going to be my -3. How do I get rid of a -3? We're going to add by 3. We're left with 10 is equal to -5x. We're going to get x by itself, so we're going to divide by -5. And we're left with x is equal to -2. Awesome. So now we have to put it in our answer. So there's going to be an x and a y. We know our x is -2. And we know our y is going to be -3x minus 3. I'm just going to rewrite that. We know that x is -2. So all we have to do is plug it in for every x we see. And that should give us our final answer. So now we have to simplify. -3 times -2 is going to be +6, because a negative times a negative makes a positive. And then we're left with +6 minus 3, which if you do the math in your fingers, you're left with positive 3. You have $6 and I take away 3, you're left with $3. All right, now that was a lot of steps, but let me try to break it down into 3 simple steps. First, we need to get either X or Y. It doesn't matter which one you choose to get by itself. Then we're going to plug that into our second equation. So since we got Y by itself in our first step, we're going to plug in for every Y that we see in our second step. Then that's going to give us an X value. And then once we have our X value, we can plug it back into the formula that we got at first, which is what we did here. And that's going to give us our X and our Y value. Our X is -2 and our Y is positive 3. All right. So like I said over here, one more time. It doesn't matter which one you get by itself. You can get X or Y by itself. The reason I chose to get Y by itself is because X has a 3 in front of it and Y has nothing in front of it. So it is easier to get Y by itself. In this case, if we look at my first formula, X minus 3Y equals to 6. There is nothing in front of my X and there's a -3 in front of my Y. So which one will be easiest to get by itself, X or Y? Everyone should have at least thought X. So that means we have to get X by itself. How do I get X by itself? Well, I have to get rid of -3Y. How do I get rid of -3Y? We're going to add by 3Y. We are left with 6 plus 3Y, which you cannot combine because the bottom one has a Y and the top one doesn't have a Y. So it's going to be 3Y plus 6 is equal to X. So now that we have X by itself, we're going to go ahead and plug it into every single X that we see in our second equation. So 4X minus 12Y is equal to 24. Instead of writing my X down, I'm going to write down that. So 4, instead of writing X, I'm going to write 3Y plus 6. Sorry, that was my phone. Minus 12Y is equal to 24. Now, we haven't done this type of problem in a while. Let's see if you guys remember what to do. Anytime we have a number outside of a parentheses and 2 numbers inside, what do we have to do? So we're going to do distributive property. You guys might remember it as box method or arrow method. I'm going to do box method for the sake of this video. So we're going to put everything outside of the box, which is our 4, on the left side. And then we're going to put everything inside of the parentheses on the top of the box. So we're going to have 3Y and 6. 3Y and 6. Now we're going to multiply the numbers to get the numbers inside of the box. So 4 times 3Y is 12Y. 4 times 6 is 24. So this becomes 12Y plus 24. Minus 12Y, I'm just bringing down the rest of the equation, equals 24. I'm going to erase this just because it's in my way. Teacher, feel free to go back and erase it if you need to. And pause it if you need to. So now we have to solve for Y. I have to combine like terms, so I have to combine my Y's together and my numbers together. We have 12Y and -12Y. If we have 12 Y's and we take 12 Y's away, we should be left with nothing. They cancel each other out. So now we're left with 24 equals 24. My letters canceled out. What does that mean? Well, that's one of the special occasions that we have. So here, in all the other problems, we're left with a letter. We're left with a letter and a number. Letter and a number. Letter and a number. This is one of the special occasions where all my letters cancel out and we're left with two numbers. If all my letters cancel out and we're left with two numbers that match, so 24 and 24, the answer is going to be many infinite solutions. Infinitely many solutions. Infinitely many solutions. So once again, if our letters cancel out like they did here, and we're left with two numbers that match, so 24 and 24, my solution is going to be infinitely many solutions. That means that these two equations are essentially the same equations. So just like you did in graphing, if you were to graph both of them, they would be overlapping. They will be overlapping. All right, so what if our letters were to cancel out, but we were left with two numbers that don't match? So let's say instead of just getting 24 is equal to 24, we'll get like -3 is equal to 2. If all our letters cancel out and we're left with two numbers that don't match, like we are here, we would have no solution. No solution. Cool. That is all I have for you today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to come ask me. You know where I am. You guys do have a homework. Your sub will pass it out. And yeah, good luck.